Nate Patterson's weathered hands gripped the gas pump handle as snow began to fall on that December evening, his 8-year-old son Jamie sleeping peacefully in the back seat of their old Honda. He had no idea that in just a few minutes, a simple act of kindness would set in motion a chain of events that would one day save his child's life. What started as an ordinary stop for gas would become the foundation of a miracle that wouldn't reveal itself for another decade. The shivering teenager approaching strangers in the parking lot looked desperate, rejected by everyone he asked. But Nate couldn't have known that this boy would grow up to become the one person who could pull Jamie back from the brink of death. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button for more real, emotional, life-changing stories like this, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The fluorescent lights of the quick stop cast harsh shadows across the snow-dusted pavement as Nate Patterson finished filling his tank. The December wind cut through his worn jacket, and he pulled it tighter around his chest, glancing back at his son Jamie, who was curled up in the back seat, fast asleep despite the cold. At 34, Nate had learned to stretch every dollar, and tonight's grocery run had taken longer than expected. The single father worked 2 jobs to keep their small apartment and put food on the table, his days blending together in a routine of work, school pickup, homework help, and bedtime stories. As he replaced the gas cap, movement in his peripheral vision caught his attention. A young man, maybe 16 or 17, was approaching an elderly couple near the convenience store entrance. Even from a distance, Nate could see the teenager was underdressed for the weather, wearing only a thin hoodie and jeans with holes at the knees. The boy's posture was hunched, his shoulders drawn up against the biting wind, and his breath formed small clouds in the frigid air. The elderly couple shook their heads and hurried into the store, leaving the teenager standing alone under the harsh lights. Nate watched as the boy approached another customer, a middle-aged woman in an expensive coat, gesturing with his hands as he spoke. She recoiled slightly, shaking her head with obvious suspicion before quickly walking to her car and driving away without looking back. Something about the scene tugged at Nate's chest. He had been in difficult situations himself, especially in the early days after Jamie's mother had left them when the boy was barely 2 years old. Those memories of desperation, of needing help and finding only closed doors, remained vivid in his mind. He remembered standing in welfare offices, swallowing his pride as he asked for assistance, feeling the weight of judgment from strangers who assumed they knew his story. The teenager moved to another customer, this time a man in a business suit who was talking loudly on his phone. The businessman didn't even pause his conversation, simply waving the boy away with an annoyed gesture as he climbed into his Mercedes and drove off. The rejection was visible in the teenager's posture as his shoulders sagged further, but he didn't give up. He spotted another potential helper near the air pump station. Nate found himself walking closer, drawn by curiosity and growing concern. He could hear fragments of the conversation now, the teenager's voice carrying a note of desperation despite his attempts to remain polite. "Please, sir, I just need to make one phone call. My phone died and I'm stranded here. I can give you my watch as collateral, anything you want." The man at the air pump looked the teenager up and down with obvious distrust. "Sorry, kid, can't help you. Try the payphone." He gestured toward the corner of the building where a battered payphone stood, its receiver dangling by the cord, clearly out of order. "Sir, please," the teenager continued, his voice cracking slightly. "The payphone's broken. I just need 2 minutes to call my aunt. She's expecting me, and she'll be worried sick if I don't show up." But the man was already walking away, shaking his head. "Find someone else to con, kid." The word con hit the teenager like a physical blow. Nate saw the boy's face crumple for just a moment before he composed himself, squaring his shoulders with determination that seemed far beyond his years. There was something in that gesture, that refusal to break down despite the repeated rejections, that reminded Nate of himself during his darkest moments. Without fully conscious thought, Nate found his feet carrying him across the parking lot. The teenager was now standing alone near the ice machine, looking around the parking lot for another potential helper. His lips had taken on a bluish tint from the cold, and Nate noticed his hands were shaking, though whether from cold or nerves, he couldn't tell. "Hey!" Nate called out softly, not wanting to startle the boy. "You need to make a call?" The teenager turned, his eyes wide with a mixture of hope and wariness. Up close, Nate could see that despite his youth, the boy's face carried the weight of someone who had seen more than his share of hardship. His dark hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and stress. But there was also something else in those eyes, an intelligence and determination that struck Nate immediately. "Yes, sir," the teenager said, his voice polite despite his obvious desperation. "My phone died and I really need to call my aunt. I'm supposed to be at her house tonight, and she'll be worried if I don't show up. I tried asking other people, but—" He gestured helplessly at the parking lot. "No problem," Nate said, pulling his phone from his jacket pocket. It wasn't the newest model. The screen was cracked from when Jamie had dropped it the previous month, but it worked. "Take your time." The teenager's face transformed with relief and gratitude so profound that Nate felt his own chest tighten with emotion. "Really? Thank you so much, sir. I promise I'll be quick." "What's your name?" Nate asked as he handed over the phone. "Marcus," the boy replied, his cold fingers fumbling slightly with the device. "Marcus Williams. And thank you, seriously. You have no idea what this means to me." As Marcus dialed, Nate found himself studying the young man more closely. Despite his disheveled appearance and obvious difficult circumstances, there was something dignified about him. He stood straight despite the cold, spoke clearly and politely, and handled Nate's phone with careful respect. These weren't the characteristics Nate would associate with someone trying to run a scam, as the previous man had suggested. The call connected, and Marcus's face brightened immediately. "Aunt Patricia? It's Marcus. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm at the Quick Stop on Highway 45. My ride fell through and I don't have bus money." He paused, listening to the voice on the other end. No, don't come out in this weather. Maybe I can find another way." His voice trailed off as he looked around the parking lot, clearly seeing no viable options. Nate made a decision that would echo through the years to come, though he had no way of knowing it at the time. "Where does your aunt live?" he asked quietly. Marcus covered the phone's mouthpiece. "About 15 minutes from here, over on Maple Street. But I don't want to impose. You've already done so much." "I've got my son in the car, but he's asleep. I can give you a ride." The gratitude that flooded Marcus's face was so intense it was almost uncomfortable to witness. "Are you serious? I mean, are you sure? I don't want to put you out." "It's no trouble," Nate said, surprised by how much he meant it. "Let me get my car warmed up." Marcus spoke into the phone again. "Aunt Patricia? Actually, this kind man is going to give me a ride. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He listened for a moment, then smiled. "Yes, ma'am, I'll be careful. His name is—" He looked at Nate questioningly. "Nate Patterson." "Nate Patterson," Marcus repeated into the phone. "Yes, I'll have him call you when we get close, so you know it's really me." He ended the call and handed the phone back to Nate with both hands, as if it were something precious. "Mr. Patterson, I don't know how to thank you. Nobody else would even listen to me. People are scared these days," Nate said, pocketing his phone. "Can't blame them entirely, but sometimes you've got to trust your gut about people." As they walked toward Nate's Honda, Marcus glanced through the rear window at Jamie, who was still sleeping peacefully, his small face relaxed and innocent. "Your son?" Marcus asked softly. Jamie, he's 8. Nate opened the driver's door carefully, trying not to let too much cold air into the car. Been a long day for him. He looks like a good kid, Marcus said, settling into the passenger seat with obvious relief to be out of the wind. As Nate started the engine and adjusted the heater, Marcus continued, I hope I have kids someday. Want to be the kind of dad who's there for them, you know? There was something in the way Marcus said it that made Nate glance over at him. Your dad not around? He died when I was 12, Marcus said quietly, his breath still visible in the cold car as they waited for the heater to warm up. Cancer. My mom. She tried for a while, but she had her own problems. Drugs, mostly. I've been bouncing between relatives for the past few years, trying to finish high school. The matter-of-fact way Marcus shared this information spoke volumes about his resilience. Nate had heard similar stories from other kids in difficult situations, but there was something about this particular teenager that struck him as different. Maybe it was the way Marcus had remained polite even when people rejected him, or the careful way he handled the phone, or the genuine concern he'd shown for Jamie without even knowing him. Where do you go to school? Nate asked as he pulled out of the gas station parking lot. Washington High, when I can get there. It's been tough this semester because I don't always have reliable transportation, and I've had to miss some days to work. But I'm keeping my grades up. I want to go to college. What do you want to study? Marcus was quiet for a moment, looking out at the snow beginning to accumulate on the windshield. Medicine, maybe. I know it sounds crazy, kid like me thinking about becoming a doctor, but I've spent a lot of time in hospitals with my dad, and later visiting my mom in rehab facilities. I've seen how much difference the right doctor can make in someone's life. Doesn't sound crazy at all, Nate said, and he meant it. There was something about Marcus's quiet determination that reminded him of his own struggles to build a better life for Jamie. What kind of medicine? Not sure yet. They be pediatrics? Kids shouldn't have to go through medical stuff alone, and sometimes they need someone who understands what it's like to feel scared and out of control. Marcus paused, then added, like tonight, when everyone kept walking away from me, I know what it feels like to need help and not be able to find it. They drove in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the heater finally beginning to chase away the chill. In the back seat, Jamie stirred slightly, but remained asleep, his face peaceful in the glow of passing streetlights. Nate found himself thinking about the randomness of life, how a simple decision to help someone could lead to unexpected connections. Turn left at the next light, Marcus directed. It's the blue house with the white fence. Third one down. As they pulled up to a modest but well-maintained house, Nate could see a woman's silhouette in the front window. The porch light came on immediately, and a woman in her 50s emerged, wrapping a heavy coat around herself as she hurried down the front walk. That's Aunt Patricia, Marcus said, his voice warm with affection. She's been trying to help me get back on track. Works 2 jobs herself, but she still makes room for me. Marcus started to get out of the car, then paused. Mr. Patterson, I know this might sound strange, but could I get your phone number? Not to bother you or anything, but I'd like to be able to thank you properly someday. Maybe when I'm in a better position to pay it forward. Nate found himself smiling. Sure, kid. He pulled out his phone and they exchanged numbers, Marcus carefully entering the information into a small notebook he pulled from his jacket pocket. I don't have a phone right now, Marcus admitted, but when I do, I'll call. And Mr. Patterson? Thank you. Really? You didn't just give me a ride. You gave me hope that there are still good people in the world. Patricia Williams reached the car just as Marcus stepped out, and she immediately wrapped him in a fierce hug. Marcus, baby, I was so worried. Are you okay? You're freezing. I'm fine, Aunt Patricia. "This is Mr. Patterson, the man I told you about." Patricia leaned down to speak through the open passenger door. "Sir, I can't thank you enough. Marcus is a good boy, but he's had some tough breaks. For you to help him like this, to trust him when nobody else would, it means everything." "He's a good kid," Nate said simply. "Anyone could see that." "Not everyone," Patricia said quietly, her meaning clear. "But you did, and that makes all the difference." As Nate drove home through the increasingly heavy snow, he found himself thinking about Marcus Williams. There had been something special about the teenager. A quality that went beyond his polite manner and obvious intelligence. It was a strength that came from surviving difficult circumstances without becoming bitter. A determination to build something better despite the obstacles in his path. In the back seat, Jamie finally woke up as they pulled into their apartment complex parking lot. "Dad? Where are we?" "Home, buddy." "Sorry it took so long." "Did something happen?" Jamie asked sleepily, his 8-year-old intuition picking up on his father's thoughtful mood. "Met someone interesting tonight," Nate said as he helped Jamie out of the car. "A young man who reminded me that sometimes helping people is the most important thing we can do." "Did you help him?" "I gave him a ride when he needed one." Jamie nodded seriously, the way children do when they sense something important has happened even if they don't fully understand it. "That was nice, Dad." "Yeah," Nate said, looking up at the snow falling through the glow of the parking lot lights. "Sometimes being nice is easier than people think." The years that followed were busy ones for the Patterson family. Nate continued working his 2 jobs. A morning shift at a local manufacturing plant and evening hours doing bookkeeping for small businesses. Jamie grew from a quiet 8-year-old into an energetic teenager with a passion for soccer and a talent for making friends. The memory of that snowy night at the gas station faded into the background of daily life. Just one of many small kindnesses that marked the passage of time. Nate never heard from Marcus Williams again, though he occasionally wondered what had become of the determined young man. Sometimes, when Jamie was struggling with homework or complaining about some teenage problem that seemed insurmountable, Nate would think about Marcus's quiet strength and use it as an example of how challenges could be overcome with persistence and the right attitude. By the time Jamie turned 16, he had grown into a confident young man who shared his father's natural empathy for others. He was captain of his high school soccer team, maintained good grades despite his busy athletic schedule, and had inherited Nate's instinct for helping people who needed it. The bond between father and son had only strengthened over the years, built on a foundation of mutual respect and shared values. It was during Jamie's junior year that their lives took an unexpected turn. The soccer season had been going well, with Jamie's team making it to the regional championship game. Nate had arranged to leave work early that Friday afternoon to watch the game, something he rarely did but felt Jamie deserved after all his hard work. The October day was crisp and clear, perfect weather for soccer. Nate arrived at the field just as the teams were finishing their warm-up exercises, and he found a seat in the bleachers among the other parents and fans. Jamie spotted him immediately and waved, his face breaking into the wide grin that never failed to make Nate's chest swell with pride. The game was intense from the opening whistle. Both teams were evenly matched, and the play moved back and forth across the field with neither side able to establish a clear advantage. Jamie was playing exceptionally well, his speed and ball handling skills keeping the opposing defense constantly off balance. It was midway through the second half when it happened. Jamie was sprinting toward the goal, ball at his feet, when he suddenly stumbled and fell to his knees. At first, Nate assumed it was just fatigue or perhaps a cramp from the intense pace of the game. But when Jamie didn't get back up, instead clutching his chest and looking around with obvious confusion and fear, Nate knew something was seriously wrong. The referee stopped play immediately, and both coaches rushed onto the field. Nate was already climbing down from the bleachers, his heart pounding with a different kind of adrenaline than he'd ever experienced. By the time he reached the field, Jamie was lying on his back, his face pale and his breathing shallow and rapid. "Dad," Jamie gasped as Nate knelt beside him. "Something's wrong. My chest really hurts, and I feel dizzy." "It's okay, son. We're going to get you help right away." Nate looked up at the coach, who was already on his phone calling for an ambulance. The next few minutes passed in a blur of activity. The paramedics arrived quickly, their professional calm a stark contrast to the fear that was threatening to overwhelm Nate. They checked Jamie's vital signs, asked him questions about his symptoms, and carefully loaded him onto a stretcher. "We're taking him to Regional Medical Center," one of the paramedics told Nate. "You can follow us there." The drive to the hospital was the longest 15 minutes of Nate's life. His mind raced through possibilities, most of them terrifying. Jamie had always been healthy, athletic, strong. The idea that something could be seriously wrong with his heart seemed impossible, yet the paramedic's grave expression suggested otherwise. At the hospital, Jamie was immediately taken to the emergency department, while Nate was directed to a waiting area. The next few hours were a nightmare of waiting, incomplete information, and mounting fear. Doctors came and went, running tests and asking questions that Nate answered as best he could while fighting to maintain his composure. It was nearly midnight when Dr. Sarah Chen, the emergency department physician, finally sat down with Nate to explain what they had discovered. "Mr. Patterson, we've run extensive tests on Jamie, and I'm afraid we found a serious problem with his heart." Nate felt the world tilt around him. "What kind of problem?" "Jamie has a condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's a genetic condition where the heart muscle becomes abnormally thick, which can interfere with the heart's ability to pump blood effectively. In some cases, it can cause sudden cardiac arrest, especially during intense physical activity." The words seemed to echo in Nate's head without fully registering. "Is he going to be okay?" "The condition is serious, but it's treatable. However, Jamie needs specialized care from a pediatric cardiologist. The good news is that we have an excellent cardiac program here." "And I've already called in our best pediatric heart specialist. He's on his way in now to evaluate Jamie. Can I see him?" "Of course. He's awake and asking for you." Jamie looked small and vulnerable in the hospital bed, connected to monitors that beeped and flashed with information that Nate couldn't interpret. But his eyes were alert, and he managed a weak smile when his father entered the room. "Hey, Dad. Pretty dramatic way to get out of running laps in practice, huh?" Despite everything, Nate found himself smiling at his son's attempted humor. "Leave it to you to find the silver lining. The doctor said my heart is messed up," Jamie said, his voice smaller now. "Am I going to die?" "No," Nate said firmly, sitting down beside the bed and taking Jamie's hand. "We're going to fix this, whatever it takes. You're going to be fine." A soft knock on the door interrupted them, and Dr. Chen entered, followed by a tall young man in a white coat. The new doctor appeared to be in his late 20s, with kind eyes and an air of quiet confidence that immediately put Nate at ease. "Mr. Patterson, this is Dr. Marcus Williams, our pediatric cardiologist. He's going to be taking care of Jamie." Nate looked up at the doctor and felt a jolt of recognition, though he couldn't immediately place where he'd seen the man before. There was something familiar about the face, something that tugged at a memory he couldn't quite grasp. Dr. Williams stepped forward with a professional smile, then stopped abruptly, his eyes widening as he looked at Nate. For a moment, neither man spoke, the recognition dawning simultaneously. "Mr. Patterson?" Dr. Williams said softly, his voice carrying a note of wonder. "Nate Patterson? From the gas station?" The memory came flooding back all at once. The snowy night 8 years earlier, the desperate teenager asking for help, the drive to Aunt Patricia's house. But this confident young doctor bore little resemblance to the shivering boy Nate had helped that December evening. "Marcus?" Nate said, standing up slowly. "Marcus Williams?" "Oh my God," Jamie said from the bed, looking back and forth between his father and the doctor. "You two know each other?" Dr. Williams moved closer, his professional demeanor softening into something more personal. "Your father probably doesn't remember, but 8 years ago, he helped me when I was in a really tough spot. I was just a kid, stranded at a gas station in the middle of winter, and nobody would help me. Nobody except, quote, your dad." "I remember," Nate said quietly. "You wanted to be a doctor." "And you told me it didn't sound crazy," Marcus replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Mr. Patterson, I don't think you realize what that night meant to me. I had been rejected by so many people, treated like I was trying to stam them or worse. I was starting to lose faith in humanity. But you looked at me and saw someone worth helping." Dr. Chen cleared her throat gently. "I hate to interrupt this reunion, but we should focus on Jamie's condition." "Of course," Dr. Williams said, immediately shifting back into professional mode. "Jamie, I'm Dr. Williams, and I'm here to help you understand what's happening with your heart and figure out the best way to treat it." Over the next hour, Dr. Williams explained Jamie's condition in terms that both father and son could understand. He was thorough but compassionate, answering every question with patience and providing realistic but hopeful information about treatment options. "The most important thing right now is determining the severity of Jamie's condition and developing a treatment plan," Dr. Williams explained. "We'll need to do some additional tests, including an MRI and a specialized ultrasound of his heart. Depending on what we find, treatment might involve medication, lifestyle changes, or in some cases, surgery." "Surgery?" Nate asked, his voice tight with worry. "It's one option, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I want to see all the test results first. What I can tell you is that with proper treatment, most young people with this condition go on to live normal, healthy lives." As Dr. Williams prepared to leave to order the additional tests, he paused at the door. "Mr. Patterson, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" They stepped into the hallway, where Dr. Williams turned to face Nate with an expression of profound gratitude. "I need you to know something. That night 8 years ago, you didn't just give me a ride home. You gave me hope at a time when I had almost none left. Marcus, you don't need to. But please, let me finish. After that night, I kept thinking about what you said about trusting your gut about people. About how sometimes you have to have faith in others. It changed how I saw the world. Instead of focusing on all the people who had rejected me, I started looking for the ones who might help." Dr. Williams paused, collecting his thoughts. "I threw myself into my studies after that. Every time things got difficult, every time I wanted to give up, I remembered that there was at least one person in the world who had looked at me and seen potential instead of problems. It got me through high school, through college, through medical school. You did all that yourself, Marcus. You had the strength and the intelligence. But I might never have used them if you hadn't shown me that people could be good, that kindness still existed in the world. You planted a seed that night, Mr. Patterson. Everything I've accomplished since then grew from that moment." Nate felt tears threatening his eyes. "I just gave you a ride, son. You gave me dignity when everyone else saw only problems. You treated me like a human being worth helping. And now," Dr. Williams's voice grew stronger, "now I get to return that kindness by taking care of your son. Mr. Patterson, I promise you, Jamie is going to get the best care possible. I'm going to make sure of it." The following days were a whirlwind of tests, consultations, and medical procedures. True to his word, Dr. Williams provided exceptional care, bringing in specialists when needed and ensuring that Jamie and Nate understood every aspect of the diagnosis and treatment plan. The test results revealed that Jamie's condition was serious but manageable. His heart muscle was significantly thickened, but not to the point where immediate surgery was necessary. Instead, Dr. Williams prescribed a combination of medications to help regulate Jamie's heart rhythm and reduce the risk of sudden cardiac events. The medication should help significantly, Dr. Williams explained during one of their consultations. But Jamie, you're going to have to make some lifestyle changes. No more competitive sports, unfortunately. The intense physical exertion could trigger dangerous heart rhythms. For a 16-year-old athlete, this news was devastating. Jamie had dreamed of playing soccer in college, possibly even professionally. The loss of that future hit him harder than the physical symptoms of his condition. "I know this is tough," Dr. Williams said gently. "But there are other ways to stay involved with sports. You could coach, manage a team, maybe even become a sports medicine doctor yourself. This isn't the end of your story, Jamie. It's just a different chapter than you expected." As Jamie began to adjust to his new reality, Nate marveled at the strange turns life could take. 8 years earlier, he had made a simple decision to help a stranded teenager, never imagining that the same young man would one day hold his son's life in his hands. The randomness of it was almost overwhelming, yet it also felt like something approaching destiny. Dr. Williams continued to be actively involved in Jamie's care, monitoring his progress closely and adjusting his medications as needed. But beyond his medical expertise, he provided something equally valuable: inspiration. He shared his own story with Jamie, talking about how setbacks and limitations could be transformed into motivation for new goals. "When I was your age," Dr. Williams told Jamie during one visit, "I thought my life was over because of my circumstances. I couldn't see past the immediate problems to imagine a different future. But sometimes the path we're forced to take leads us to places we never could have planned to go." Under Dr. Williams's care, Jamie's condition stabilized. The medications controlled his symptoms effectively, and regular monitoring showed that his heart function was remaining stable. More importantly, Jamie began to adapt to his new limitations, finding ways to stay connected to soccer as an assistant coach for his former team. 6 months after his initial collapse, Jamie was doing well enough to begin thinking about college applications. His grades had remained strong despite the medical challenges, and he had developed a new interest in sports medicine, inspired partly by his own experience and partly by watching Dr. Williams work. "I've been thinking about what Dr. Williams said about different paths," Jamie told his father one evening as they reviewed college brochures. "Maybe this whole thing happened for a reason. Maybe I'm supposed to help other athletes who have to deal with medical problems." "You'd make a great doctor," Nate said, remembering a similar conversation with Marcus years earlier. "You've got the right heart for it." It was during one of Jamie's routine follow-up appointments that Dr. Williams shared some personal news. "I wanted you both to know that I've been offered a position at Boston Children's Hospital," he said. "It's a tremendous opportunity, and I've decided to accept it." The news was bittersweet. While Nate was thrilled for Marcus's success, the thought of losing the doctor who had provided such exceptional care was concerning. "Don't worry," Dr. Williams assured them. "I'll make sure Jamie's care is transferred to an excellent colleague, and I'll always be available for consultation if needed. Besides, this isn't goodbye forever. We're connected now, all 3 of us, in a way that goes beyond just doctor and patient." On Dr. Williams's last day at Regional Medical Center, he stopped by to see Jamie one final time. The appointment was routine medically, but emotionally it carried the weight of completion, of a circle being closed. "Jamie, you're doing great," Dr. Williams said as he reviewed the latest test results. "Your heart function is stable, and as long as you keep taking your medications and follow up regularly, I expect you to have a cropper, long, healthy life." "Dr. Williams," Jamie said, "I want you to know that having you as my doctor made all the difference. Not just medically, but knowing that you and my dad had this connection, that you understood what it was like to need help and find it, it made me feel less alone." Dr. Williams smiled, and Nate could see in his eyes the same gratitude and determination that had marked the teenager he'd met 8 years earlier. "Jamie, your father taught me something important when I was about your age. He showed me that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply treat someone with dignity and kindness. That lesson has guided my entire career." As they prepared to leave, Dr. Williams turned to Nate one final time. "Mr. Patterson, I've spent the last 8 years trying to figure out how to properly thank you for what you did that night. I think I finally found the answer. Marcus, you don't owe me anything." "Maybe not," Dr. Williams replied, "but I wanted to give you this." He handed Nate a small card with his contact information. "If you ever need anything at all, you call me. And I mean that for the rest of our lives. What you gave me that night, the faith in humanity, the belief that people can be good, that's something I can never fully repay. But I can promise that I'll spend my career passing it forward." The years continue to unfold with their mixture of challenges and blessings. Jamie graduated from high school with honors and was accepted to several colleges, ultimately choosing to study pre-med with a focus on sports medicine. His heart condition remained stable under the care of Dr. Williams's colleague, and the medications continued to control his symptoms effectively. Dr. Williams kept in touch periodically, sending updates from Boston and checking on Jamie's progress. His career flourished at Children's Hospital, where he quickly established himself as one of the leading pediatric cardiologists in the country. His research focused on genetic heart conditions in young athletes, work that was partly inspired by his experience treating Jamie. Nate, now in his mid-40s, had finally been able to reduce his work schedule to a single full-time job. The financial stress of Jamie's medical bills having been largely covered by insurance and assistance programs that Dr. Williams had helped them navigate. He found himself reflecting often on the strange symmetry of their story. How a single act of kindness had created ripples that continued to spread outward. It was 5 years after Dr. Williams had moved to Boston that Nate received an unexpected phone call. Jamie was in his junior year of college, and Nate was enjoying a quiet Saturday morning when his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Patterson? This is Dr. Marcus Williams." "Marcus, how are you? How's Boston treating you?" "Boston's been wonderful, thank you. Actually, I'm calling with some news I wanted to share with you personally. I'm getting married next month, and I was wondering if you and Jamie would consider coming to the wedding." The invitation was both surprising and deeply touching. "Marcus, that's wonderful news. I'd be honored to attend." "There's something else," Dr. Williams continued. "I know this might sound strange, but I was hoping you might consider giving a reading during the ceremony. My fiancé and I have been talking about the people who have had the most impact on our lives, and your name was at the top of my list." "I'm flattered, Marcus, but are you sure? This is your special day. Mr. Patterson, there's something I never told you about that night 8 years ago. The reason I was so desperate to call my aunt wasn't just because I needed a ride. I had been having thoughts about giving up, about whether life was worth the struggle. I was at one of the lowest points of my entire life." Nate felt his chest tighten as he listened. "When you stopped to help me, when you treated me with such kindness and respect, it reminded me that there were still good people in the world. It gave me hope to keep going. Everything I've accomplished since then, my medical degree, my career, meeting Sarah, all of it traces back to that moment when you decided I was worth helping. Marcus, so yes, I'm sure. You and Jamie will be sitting in the front row, because you're family to me now. The family I chose, the family that chose me when I needed it most. The wedding was beautiful, held in a small church outside Boston with Dr. Williams's Aunt Patricia and a small gathering of close friends and colleagues. Jamie, now a confident college junior, served as an usher, his easy smile and natural warmth making him a favorite among the wedding guests. When it came time for Nate to give his reading, he stood at the podium and looked out at the assembled guests, his eyes finding Marcus and his new wife Sarah in the front row. He had chosen a passage about the unexpected ways that lives intersect and the power of simple kindness to change the world. But as he began to speak, he found himself departing from the prepared text. 8 years ago, Nate began, his voice steady despite the emotion he felt, I met a young man at a gas station who needed help. I thought I was just giving him a ride home, but what I was really doing was witnessing something extraordinary. I was seeing someone refuse to give up despite facing rejection after rejection. I was seeing courage in the face of uncertainty, dignity in difficult circumstances, and hope when hope seemed impossible. He paused, looking directly at Marcus. That young man taught me something that night, though I didn't realize it at the time. He taught me that when we help others, we're not just solving their immediate problems. We're affirming their worth as human beings, and sometimes that affirmation can change the entire trajectory of a life. The church was silent except for the soft sounds of people wiping away tears. Even Jamie, sitting in the front row, was visibly moved by his father's words. Marcus, you've spent your career saving children's lives, including my son's. But I want everyone here to know that the real miracle isn't your medical skill, though that's considerable. The real miracle is the man you became, the way you've taken the kindness you received and multiplied it 1,000-fold through your work and your character. Nate's voice grew stronger as he continued. Today, as Marcus and Sarah begin their marriage, I'm reminded that love, like kindness, has the power to transform lives in ways we can't predict or control. We plant seeds of compassion not knowing where they'll grow, but trusting that they will grow somewhere, somehow, in ways that make the world a little bit better. He looked around the church, taking in the faces of people who had been touched by Marcus's life and work. So today we celebrate not just a wedding, but the beautiful mystery of how connected we all are, how the smallest acts of love can echo through years and generations, creating ripples of goodness that extend far beyond what we can see. As Nate returned to his seat, the applause was warm and sustained. Marcus reached over to squeeze his shoulder, his eyes bright with unshed tears. The rest of the ceremony continued with joy and laughter, but the weight of Nate's words lingered, adding depth to the celebration. At the reception, Nate found himself in conversation with Dr. Sarah Chen, Marcus's new wife, who was also a physician. She worked in emergency medicine, and their meeting had been as serendipitous as many of the other connections in this story. Marcus has told me so much about you and Jamie, Sarah said as they stood together on the terrace overlooking the reception venue's gardens. He credits you with changing the entire course of his life. I think he gives me too much credit, Nate replied. Marcus had the strength and determination to build his life. I just happened to be there at the right moment. But that's exactly the point, isn't it? Sarah smiled. You were there. When someone needed help, you were there. That's not as common as it should be. She paused, looking through the windows at Marcus, who was dancing with his Aunt Patricia, both of them laughing at something she had whispered in his ear. He's going to be an amazing father someday. The way he talks about the children he treats, the way he's followed Jamie's progress over the years, I can see how much he loves kids. And I think a lot of that comes from remembering what it was like to be young and vulnerable and need someone to believe in him. He's already an amazing man, Nate said. You're both lucky to have found each other. As the evening wound down, Jamie found himself in conversation with several of Marcus's colleagues from Boston Children's Hospital. His interest in sports medicine had evolved during college into a broader fascination with cardiology, and the doctors were impressed by his knowledge and passion. "Have you considered applying to our research program?" Dr. Jennifer Ross, one of Marcus's research partners, asked Jamie. "We're doing groundbreaking work on genetic heart conditions in young athletes. Given your personal experience and academic background, you might be an ideal candidate." Jamie looked across the room at his father and Marcus, who were deep in conversation near the bar. The symmetry of the moment wasn't lost on him. The possibility that he might end up working alongside the doctor who had saved his life, continuing the cycle of care and compassion that had begun with his father's simple act of kindness. "I'd be very interested in learning more," Jamie said. "Dr. Williams has been such an inspiration to me, both as a patient and as someone thinking about a medical career." As the wedding reception came to an end, Marcus and Sarah prepared to leave for their honeymoon. But before departing, Marcus pulled Nate and Jamie aside for a private moment. "I have something for you both," Marcus said, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out 2 small boxes. "These are for you, but I want you to understand what they represent." Nate opened his box to find a simple silver watch. The inscription on the back read, "Time well spent changes everything. Thank you for giving me yours." Marcus Jamie's box contained a similar watch, but his inscription read, "For the next generation of healers. Your strength inspires me every day. Dr. Marcus Williams." "Marcus, these are too much," Nate protested, but Marcus held up his hand. 8 years ago, I offered you my watch as collateral for using your phone, remember?" "You wouldn't take it." "Well, I've been waiting all this time to give you something better. Time is the most valuable thing we have, and you gave me yours when I needed it most. These watches are to remind you that every moment of kindness we offer has the potential to change someone's life forever." The embrace that followed was long and heartfelt, the kind of hug that encompasses years of gratitude, respect, and genuine affection. When they finally separated, there were few dry eyes among the small group. "This isn't goodbye," Marcus said firmly. "We're family now, and family stays connected. Sarah and I will be visiting regularly, and I expect you both to come see us in Boston. Jamie, when you're ready to apply to medical school, I want to help with your applications. And Mr. Patterson," he turned to Nate with a smile, "I expect to be invited to Jamie's wedding someday, assuming he finds someone who can put up with him." "Hey!" Jamie protested, laughing despite the emotional moment. As Marcus and Sarah drove away, their car decorated with the traditional cans and ribbons, Nate and Jamie stood together in the parking lot, processing the pad. Events of the day. "Dad," Jamie said quietly, "do you ever think about how different our lives would be if you hadn't stopped to help Marcus that night?" Nate considered the question seriously. Without Marcus, Jamie's heart condition might not have been diagnosed and treated as effectively. Without that experience, Jamie might never have developed his interest in medicine. Without Marcus's example and mentorship, Jamie's future might have taken a completely different direction. "I think about it sometimes," Nate admitted. "But then I remember that helping people isn't something you do for the rewards or the outcomes. You do it because it's the right thing to do, because everyone deserves dignity and kindness, especially when they're vulnerable." "But still," Jamie persisted, "it's pretty amazing how it all worked out." "Yeah," Nate agreed, looking up at the star-filled sky above the reception venue. "It really is." The drive back to their hotel was quiet, both men lost in their own thoughts about the day's events and the strange paths that had brought them to this moment. It wasn't until they were back in their room, preparing for bed, that Jamie brought up something that had been on his mind throughout the evening. "Dad, I've been thinking about what Dr. Williams said about passing kindness forward. I want to do something, some way to honor what you did for him and what he did for me. What did you have in mind? I'm not sure yet, but something that helps kids who are facing medical challenges. Maybe a scholarship fund, or a program that connects young patients with mentors who've been through similar experiences. I keep thinking about how alone Dr. Williams felt that night, and how many kids must feel that same way when they're dealing with serious health problems. Nate felt a familiar swell of pride in his son. That sounds like a wonderful idea, Jamie. When you're ready to start planning something like that, I'll help however I can. I was hoping you'd say that, Jamie smiled, because I think it should be both of our names on it. The Patterson Foundation or something like that? This whole story started with you, Dad. It should continue with both of us. 2 years later, Jamie graduated from college with honors and was accepted to several prestigious medical schools. True to his word, Marcus had helped with the application process, providing recommendations and guidance that proved invaluable. Jamie ultimately chose to attend Harvard Medical School, partly because of its proximity to Boston and the opportunity to continue learning from Marcus. The Patterson Foundation had become a reality during Jamie's senior year of college, starting small but growing steadily through fundraising efforts and donations from people who were moved by their story. The foundation provided scholarships for students pursuing careers in medicine, with a special focus on those who had overcome significant personal challenges. Marcus and Sarah had become regular visitors, spending holidays with the Patterson family and maintaining the close relationship that had developed over the years. Sarah, who specialized in emergency medicine, had become like a daughter to Nate, and the two couples often joked about the unconventional way their families had been formed. It was during one of these visits, as they sat around Nate's dinner table sharing stories and laughter, that Marcus made an announcement that surprised everyone. "Sarah and I have some news," he said, reaching for his wife's hand. "We're going to have a baby." The celebration that followed was joyous and heartfelt. After years of focusing on their careers, Marcus and Sarah had decided they were ready to start a family, and the news filled the room with excitement and anticipation. "Do you know if it's a boy or a girl?" Jamie asked. "It's too early to tell," Sarah replied, "but we've already started thinking about names." "Well," Marcus said with a meaningful look at Nate, "if it's a boy, we were thinking about Nathan. We'd like to honor the man who changed my life and made this family possible." The emotion that filled the room was palpable. Nate felt tears threatening his eyes as he absorbed the magnitude of what Marcus was saying. To have his name carried forward by the child of the young man he had helped so many years ago felt like the completion of a circle he never could have imagined. "Marcus, I don't know what to say," Nate managed. "Say yes," Marcus replied simply. "Say you'll be this baby's honorary grandfather, because that's what you already are to me." 9 months later, Nathan Marcus Williams was born, a healthy, beautiful baby who brought immense joy to his parents and extended family. Nate was indeed treated as an honorary grandfather, participating in the baby's naming ceremony and becoming a regular presence in his young life. Jamie, now in his second year of medical school, split his time between his studies and volunteering with the Patterson Foundation. The foundation had grown significantly, providing scholarships to dozens of students and funding research into genetic heart conditions in young people. Marcus had become an informal advisor to the foundation, helping to identify promising research projects and deserving scholarship recipients. As little Nathan grew from baby to toddler, he became a symbol of the continuing legacy of that snowy night at the gas station. His presence at family gatherings was a reminder of how far they had all traveled, how much they had accomplished, and how the simple decision to help a stranger had created connections that would last for generations. On Nathan's second birthday, the extended family gathered at Marcus and Sarah's home in Boston for a celebration. As Nate watched the toddler play with his toys, surrounded by people who loved him, He reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought them all together. Jamie, now in his third year of medical school and planning to specialize in pediatric cardiology like his mentor, was playing on the floor with Nathan, making the little boy giggle with his silly faces and sounds. The sight filled Nate with a profound sense of satisfaction and purpose. "Penny for your thoughts?" Sarah asked, sitting down beside Nate on the sofa. "Just thinking about how strange life is," Nate replied. "How the smallest decisions can have the biggest consequences. Do you ever regret it? Stopping to help Marcus that night?" Nate looked at her with surprise. "Regret it? Sarah, that might have been the best decision I ever made. Not just because of how it worked out, but because it was the right thing to do. If I had driven past Marcus that night, I would have regretted that for the rest of my life." Marcus says the same thing about accepting your help. He says it taught him that accepting kindness is just as important as giving it. Across the room, Marcus was helping Nathan open presents, his face bright with the joy of fatherhood. When he caught Nate looking at him, he raised his hand in a small wave, a gesture that somehow conveyed years of gratitude and affection. "You know what the best part is?" Nate said to Sarah. "This story isn't over. Nathan will grow up knowing about the night his dad was helped by a stranger, about the importance of treating people with dignity and kindness. He'll carry that forward in his own life, and maybe someday he'll help someone who needs it, continuing the cycle. And Jamie will be treating patients soon, bringing his own experience and compassion to his work." "Exactly. What started as one moment of kindness has become something that will touch hundreds, maybe thousands of lives over the years." As the birthday party continued around them, with laughter and conversation filling the room, Nate felt a deep sense of peace. The watch Marcus had given him at his wedding caught the light from the window, and he thought about the inscription, "Time well spent changes everything." That snowy December night 8 years earlier, Nate had spent 15 minutes of his time giving a ride to a stranded teenager. Those 15 minutes had indeed changed everything, not just for Marcus, but for Jamie, for Nathan, for all the patients Marcus would treat throughout his career, for all the students who would receive scholarships from the Patterson Foundation. Time well spent, indeed. As the sun set over Boston, casting long shadows through the windows of Marcus and Sarah's home, the family gathered around the dinner table for Nathan's birthday meal. The little boy sat in his high chair between his parents, his face smeared with chocolate cake, his eyes bright with the simple joy of being surrounded by people who loved him. "I'd like to make a toast," Marcus said, raising his glass. "To family, both the one we're born into and the one we choose. To Nathan, who represents the best of all of us and the bright future ahead. And to Nate Patterson, whose kindness 8 years ago created the family we are." Today, everyone raised their glasses, including little Nathan, who held up his sippy cup with both hands, not understanding the words but sensing the importance of the moment. "To time well spent," Nate added, his voice thick with emotion, "and to the endless possibilities that come from treating each other with dignity and love." As they clinked glasses and drank to the toast, the setting sun painted the room in golden light, illuminating faces filled with joy, gratitude, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from lives well lived and connections that transcend the ordinary boundaries of family and friendship. The story that began with a simple act of kindness had become something larger than any of them could have imagined, a testament to the power of human decency and the mysterious ways that lives intersect and influence each other across time. And as little Nathan babbled happily in his high chair, surrounded by the love and warmth of his chosen family, it was clear that the story was far from over. The best chapters were yet to be written, by hands guided by the same principles of kindness and compassion that had brought them all together on that snowy night so many years ago. The evening continued with more stories, more laughter, and more moments of connection that would be remembered for years to come. And somewhere in the back of everyone's mind was the wonderful knowledge that this was just the beginning, that Nathan would grow up to carry forward the legacy of kindness that had made his very existence possible, ensuring that the ripples from that December night would continue to spread outward, touching lives in ways both seen and unseen, for generations to come. In the quiet moments before bedtime, as the family began to say their goodbyes and prepare for the journey home, Nate found himself alone with Marcus for a few minutes while the others were gathering coats and car seats. "Marcus," Nate said quietly, "I want you to know how proud I am of the man you've become, the father you are, the doctor you are. That scared kid I met at the gas station has grown into someone extraordinary. Mr. Patterson." Marcus replied, his voice soft but firm. "I need you to understand something. Everything good in my life, everything I've accomplished, it all traces back to that night when you decided I was worth helping. You didn't just give me a ride home. You gave me hope, dignity, and faith in human goodness. You saved my life in every way that matters." The two men embraced, father figures to each other in different ways, connected by bonds stronger than blood. As they separated, both knew that the conversation was unnecessary, that the gratitude and love between them was so deep and enduring that words could never fully capture it. As Nate and Jamie drove back to their hotel through the quiet Boston streets, both were lost in their own thoughts about the remarkable day and the even more remarkable journey that had brought them to this point. "Dad," Jamie said finally, "I've been thinking about something Dr. Williams said earlier, about how accepting kindness is as important as giving it. What about it?" "I think that's something I need to work on. Sometimes I get so focused on helping others that I forget to let people help me. But watching you and Dr. Williams together, seeing how your relationship has grown over the years, I realize that the best relationships are built on mutual support and care." Nate nodded thoughtfully. "It's a balance, isn't it? Being strong enough to help others when they need it, but humble enough to accept help when you need it yourself." "Exactly. And I think that's what made tonight so special. We're all there for each other, no matter what. It's not about who owes what to whom. It's about love and family and choosing to care for each other." As they pulled into the hotel parking lot, Nate reflected on his son's words. Jamie had grown into a thoughtful, compassionate young man who understood the deeper meanings behind the events that had shaped their lives. The future of medicine, the future of the Patterson Foundation, the future of their family legacy was in good hands. The next morning, as they prepared to fly home, Nate received a text message from Marcus with a photo of Nathan playing with the toy medical kit Jamie had given him for his birthday. The message read, "Future doctor in training. Thank you for yesterday and for every day. You are loved and appreciated always." Nate showed the photo to Jamie, who smiled broadly at the sight of the little boy pretending to examine his stuffed animals with a toy stethoscope. "Think he'll follow in his dad's footsteps?" Jamie asked. "I think Nathan will follow his own path," Nate replied. "But he'll do it with the same values and compassion that Marcus learned from his own experiences." The cycle continues. As their plane lifted off from Boston, carrying them back home, both men felt the satisfaction of a story that had found its perfect continuation. The scared teenager from the gas station had become a renowned doctor, a loving husband, and a devoted father. The young athlete whose dreams had been derailed by a heart condition had found new purpose in medicine and service to others. And the single father who had simply chosen to be kind had witnessed the miraculous multiplication of that kindness across years and generations. The airplane climbed higher into the clear morning sky, and through the window, Nate could see the city of Boston growing smaller below them. Somewhere down there, Marcus was beginning another day of saving children's lives. Sarah was caring for patients in the emergency department, and little Nathan was learning to walk and talk and explore the world around him. The future stretched out ahead of all of them, full of possibilities and promise. And at the heart of it all was the simple truth that had started everything. When we choose to see the humanity in others, when we offer help without expecting anything in return, when we treat each person with the dignity and respect they deserve, we plant seeds that can grow into miracles. The story of Nate Patterson and Marcus Williams had become something larger than either of them had ever imagined, a testament to the power of compassion and the beautiful unpredictability of human connection. And as the plane carried them toward home, both men knew that the best parts of their story were still being written, in medical schools and hospitals, in foundation offices and family gatherings, in the daily choices to be kind that would shape the world for generations to come. 5 years after Nathan's second birthday party, Jamie had completed his medical degree and was halfway through his residency in pediatric cardiology at Boston Children's Hospital. The circle had indeed closed in the most beautiful way imaginable, with Jamie now working alongside Marcus as his mentor transitioned into the role of department head. Their professional relationship had added new dimensions to their family bond, with Jamie learning not just medical techniques but leadership skills from the man who had once been a patient himself. The Patterson Foundation had grown beyond anyone's expectations, now funding research projects across 3 major children's hospitals and providing scholarships to over 200 students annually. What had started as a modest effort to help a few deserving students had evolved into a significant force in pediatric medicine education. The Foundation's annual gala had become one of the most anticipated events in the medical community, drawing donors and supporters from across the country. Nathan, now 7 years old, had indeed shown an early interest in medicine, though his curiosity extended far beyond the toy stethoscope he had played with as a toddler. He spent many afternoons at the hospital when his parents worked late, charming nurses and patients alike with his bright personality and genuine concern for others. The staff had grown accustomed to seeing the little boy in the pediatric ward, always asking thoughtful questions about how they helped sick children feel better. It was during one of these visits that Nathan encountered a situation that would demonstrate how deeply the values of compassion and kindness had taken root in the next generation. A young patient named Sophia, barely 5 years old, had been admitted for a complex heart surgery. She spoke only Spanish, and her terrified parents struggled to communicate with the medical staff, despite the hospital's translation services. Nathan, who had been learning Spanish in school and practicing with some of the hospital's bilingual staff, noticed the family's distress during one of his visits. Without prompting from any adult, he approached Sophia's bed and began speaking to her in his carefully practiced Spanish, telling her about the nice doctors and nurses who were going to help her feel better. The transformation was immediate. Sophia's tears stopped, replaced by shy smiles as Nathan showed her some of the toys from the hospital's playroom and explained, in simple terms she could understand, what the monitors and machines around her bed were doing. Her parents watched in amazement as their daughter relaxed for the first time since arriving at the hospital. Marcus, who had been observing from the doorway, felt his heart swell with pride and something deeper, a recognition that the cycle of kindness was continuing in ways more beautiful than he had ever imagined. But he shared the story with Nate during their weekly phone call. Both men were moved to tears by the realization that Nathan was already embodying the values that had brought their families together. "He didn't learn that from any textbook," Marcus told Nate. "That kind of empathy, that instinct to help someone who's scared and alone, that comes from growing up in a family where those values are lived every day." The incident with Sophia sparked an idea that would become Nathan's first contribution to the family's legacy of service. Working with his parents and the hospital's child life specialists, Nathan helped create a program pairing bilingual children of hospital staff with young patients who spoke limited English. The Little Ambassadors program, as it came to be known, provided comfort and connection for children facing medical procedures in a language that wasn't their native tongue. The program's success caught the attention of pediatric hospitals nationwide, and soon similar initiatives were being implemented across the country. Nathan, at 7 years old, had become an inadvertent pioneer in patient advocacy, though he thought of it simply as helping kids who were scared. Meanwhile, Jamie's residency was nearing completion, and he faced the significant decision of where to begin his career as a fully licensed pediatric cardiologist. Multiple prestigious hospitals had extended offers, each representing different opportunities and challenges. The choice was complicated by his deep connection to Boston Children's Hospital and his working relationship with Marcus, balanced against the desire to bring his skills to communities that might have less access to specialized cardiac care. It was during a family dinner at Marcus and Sarah's house that the conversation turned to Jamie's future plans. Nathan, precocious as always, asked a question that cut straight to the heart of the matter. "Uncle Jamie," Nathan said, using the honorary title that had developed naturally over the years, "are you going to stay here and help Daddy take care of sick kids, or are you going to go somewhere else where kids need cha? Help too?" The simplicity of the question, framed in a child's direct way of seeing the world, crystallized something for Jamie. "That's a really good question, Nathan. What do you think I should do?" Nathan considered this seriously, his young face scrunched in concentration. "I think you should go where the kids need you most. Daddy has lots of good doctors here to help him, but maybe there are places where kids don't have any doctors who understand their hearts." The wisdom in Nathan's words struck everyone at the table. Here was a 7-year-old articulating the fundamental principle that had guided all their lives, the idea that help should go where it's needed most, regardless of personal convenience or comfort. That conversation led Jamie to accept a position at a regional medical center in rural North Carolina, where he would be the only pediatric cardiologist serving a large geographic area. The decision wasn't easy, as it meant leaving the comfort and prestige of Boston Children's Hospital, but it aligned perfectly with the values that had shaped his life since that night when his father had chosen to help a stranger. The farewell dinner before Jamie's departure was both celebratory and bittersweet. Marcus presented Jamie with a special gift, a medical journal that had belonged to one of his own mentors, inscribed with a message that brought tears to everyone's eyes. To Dr. Jamie Patterson, who learned that the greatest healing comes from the heart, may you carry forward the kindness that brought us together. Sarah had prepared a scrapbook documenting Jamie's journey from patient to medical student to resident, filled with photos and mementos that captured the remarkable transformation of a young man whose athletic dreams had been redirected toward healing others. The final page contained letters from some of the young patients Jamie had worked with during his residency, each one a testament to his compassion and skill. But perhaps the most meaningful gift came from Nathan, who'd been working on a secret project for weeks. He presented Jamie with a hand-drawn comic book titled The Heart Hero, featuring a character clearly modeled after Jamie who traveled to different places helping children with heart problems. The story was simple but profound, showing how one person's kindness could spread from community to community, making the world a better place one patient at a time. "I drew this for you, so you won't forget us when you're helping kids in North Carolina," Nathan said, his 7-year-old earnestness bringing smiles and tears in equal measure. "And so you remember that you're a superhero, even if you don't wear a cape." Jamie's first months in North Carolina were challenging but deeply rewarding. The medical center served a predominantly rural population, many of whom had never had access to specialized pediatric cardiac care. Children who would have previously required lengthy trips to distant cities could now receive treatment close to home, surrounded by their families and communities. The cultural adjustment was significant for Jamie, who had grown accustomed to the urban sophistication of Boston. But he found that the values he had learned from his father and Marcus translated perfectly to this new environment. The same empathy and respect for human dignity that had characterized every interaction in their family worked just as well with farming families and small-town communities as it had in the corridors of a major teaching hospital. One of Jamie's first major cases involved a 12-year-old boy named Dylan, whose family had been driving 8 hours each way for cardiac appointments at a distant medical center. Dylan's parents, struggling farmers who could barely afford the time away from their work, had been delaying necessary follow-up care because of the logistical challenges. When Jamie met the family, he saw something familiar in the father's eyes, the same mixture of worry and determination that he remembered from his own father during his medical crisis. The mother reminded him of the countless parents he had seen in hospital waiting rooms, worn down by stress but refusing to give up hope for their child's health. Dylan's condition was complex but treatable, requiring a series of procedures that Jamie was fully qualified to perform. But more than the medical intervention, the family needed what Marcus had provided to Jamie years earlier, the sense that they were in capable, caring hands, that someone understood their fears and would guide them through the process with compassion and expertise. Over the months of Dylan's treatment, Jamie developed a relationship with the family that extended beyond the typical doctor-patient dynamic. He learned about their struggles with crop failures and financial pressures, their determination to provide the best possible care for their son despite limited resources, their deep faith that sustained them through difficult times. When Dylan's treatment was complete and his heart function had returned to normal, his father pulled Jamie aside for a conversation that echoed themes from years earlier. "Dr. Patterson, I want you to know that you didn't just fix Dylan's heart. You gave our whole family hope when we didn't know where to turn. That means more than any medical degree or fancy hospital reputation." The comment reminded Jamie of something Marcus had once told him about the true nature of healing, that technical skill was only part of a doctor's responsibility. The rest involved seeing patients as whole human beings, understanding their fears and dreams, and providing not just medical treatment, but human connection and dignity. As word of Jamie's work spread through the region, referrals began coming from neighboring states. Parents who had heard about the young cardiologist who truly cared about his patients were willing to drive hours to bring their children to see him. The Medical Centers Administration took notice, expanding the cardiac program and recruiting additional specialists to support Jamie's work. Back in Boston, Marcus was following Jamie's progress with enormous pride. Their weekly phone conversations had become a highlight of both men's weeks, as they discussed challenging cases, shared insights about patient care, and maintained the mentoring relationship that had developed during Jamie's ASH residency. It was during one of these calls that Marcus shared some significant news. "Jamie, I've been invited to speak at the American Academy of Pediatrics annual conference about innovative approaches to patient care. I'd like to present our family's story as a case study in how personal connections can transform medical practice." The idea was both exciting and nerve-wracking. Their story had remained relatively private, shared only within their extended family and close professional colleagues. Making it public would require a level of vulnerability that none of them had previously considered. "What do you think?" Marcus asked. "Would you and your father be comfortable with me sharing how our relationship began and how it's influenced our approach to medicine?" Jamie considered the question carefully. "I think it could help other doctors understand the importance of seeing patients as human beings first. But let me talk to Dad about it. This affects all of us." When Jamie called his father to discuss Marcus's proposal, Nate's response was immediate and enthusiastic. "Son, if sharing our story can help other doctors learn to treat their patients with more compassion, then I think it's exactly what we should do. That's what this has all been about from the beginning, paying forward the kindness we've asked." Received. The presentation at the TRAPE conference was a watershed moment for Marcus's career and for the broader recognition of their family's story. Speaking to an audience of over 1,000 pediatricians, Marcus shared the complete narrative, from his desperate night at the gas station through Jamie's treatment and recovery, to their ongoing relationships and professional collaboration. The response was overwhelming. Doctors from across the country approached Marcus after the presentation, sharing their own stories of how personal connections had influenced their practice, asking for advice on implementing similar approaches in their own trauma institutions. The story resonated particularly strongly with physicians who had entered medicine with idealistic goals but had become worn down by the pressures and bureaucracy of modern healthcare. Several medical schools requested permission to use their story as part of their curriculum on patient-doctor relationships and professional ethics. The narrative provided a compelling example of how empathy and human connection could coexist with clinical excellence, challenging the traditional model that often prioritized emotional distance between physicians and patients. The presentation was recorded and widely shared, leading to invitations for Marcus to speak at medical schools and hospitals around the country. What had begun as a simple story of kindness had evolved into a movement challenging healthcare professionals to rediscover the human elements of their calling. Nathan, now 8 years old and still deeply involved in hospital life through his parents' work, began to understand that his family's story was inspiring people far beyond their immediate circle. Teachers at his school mentioned seeing the presentation online, and some of his classmates' parents, who worked in healthcare, spoke about how the story had influenced their own practice. The attention brought unexpected opportunities for the Patterson Foundation as well. Donations increased significantly as people learned about the organization's origins and mission. The foundation was able to expand its scholarship program and fund several new research initiatives focused on improving patient care and family support in pediatric medicine. But perhaps the most meaningful response came from other families who had experienced similar journeys. Parents of children with heart conditions reached out to share their own stories, describing how the presentation had given them hope and helped them understand the importance of advocating for compassionate care for their bud. Children. One letter from a mother whose daughter had undergone multiple cardiac surgeries particularly moved the entire family. She wrote, "Your story reminded me that doctors are human beings too, with their own stories and motivations. It helped me see my daughter's cardiologist not just as a medical professional, but as someone who chose this specialty because he genuinely cares about children like mine. That perspective has transformed our relationship and made the medical journey so much less frightening." As the story continued to spread, it began attracting attention from outside the medical community as well. Several authors and filmmakers expressed interest in adapting the narrative for broader audiences, recognizing its universal themes of kindness, connection, and the ripple effects of compassion. A documentary filmmaker named Rebecca Martinez reached out to Marcus with a proposal to create a feature-length film exploring not just their family story, but the broader implications for how we treat strangers and build communities. Rebecca had recently completed a project about social isolation in modern society and saw their story as a powerful counter-narrative about human connection. The prospect of the documentary was both exciting and daunting. It would mean opening their lives to even greater public scrutiny, but it also offered the opportunity to reach millions of people with a message about the transformative power of kindness. After extensive family discussions, they agreed to participate in the project, with the understanding that any proceeds would benefit the Patterson Foundation and similar organizations working to improve access to BLAS. Compassionate healthcare. The filming process took place over several months, with Rebecca and her crew documenting their daily lives, professional work, and ongoing relationships. Nathan proved to be a natural on camera, his innocent wisdom and genuine personality shining through in every interaction. One particularly powerful scene showed Nathan visiting Sophia, the young Spanish-speaking patient he had befriended years earlier. Sophia, now 10 years old and fully recovered from her surgery, had maintained contact with Nathan's family and considered him one of her best friends despite their age difference. Watching the two children interact, communicating effortlessly in both English and Spanish, switching languages as needed to include everyone in their conversation, the film crew captured something beautiful about the natural way children form connections across cultural and linguistic barriers. "Nathan taught me that hospitals don't have to be scary places," Sophia said during her interview, her English much improved but still carrying the slight accent that made her words even more endearing. "He showed me that there are always people who want to help, even when you can't understand what they're saying at first." The documentary, titled Time Well Spent, premiered at several major film festivals before receiving wide distribution. The title, drawn from the inscription on the watch Marcus had given Nate, perfectly captured the film's central message about how moments of kindness can compound over time into profound social change. Critics praised the film for its authentic portrayal of human connection and its hopeful vision of how individual actions can create lasting positive change. But more importantly, for the families involved, audiences responded with overwhelming emotional connection, sharing their own stories of unexpected kindness and community support. The film's success led to speaking engagements for multiple family members at conferences, universities, and community organizations. Nate, who had always been more comfortable behind the scenes, found himself reluctantly thrust into a public role as people sought to understand the mindset that had led him to help Marcus that night. During one particularly memorable speaking engagement at a teachers' conference, an educator asked Nate how parents could raise children who would naturally help others in need. His response, simple and heartfelt, became one of the most quoted passages from all their public appearances. "I don't think you can teach kindness through lectures or rules," Nate said. "Kids learn it by watching how we treat the people around us, especially the people who can't do anything for us in return. They need to see us choose compassion over convenience, understanding over judgment. If they grow up seeing that helping others is just what people do, then that's what they'll do too." The success of the documentary also brought unexpected challenges. Their story became so well known that they occasionally encountered people who recognized them in public, leading to awkward interactions and requests for advice or assistance that they weren't always equipped to handle. Nathan, now 9 years old, struggled at times with the attention, not fully understanding why his normal family had become the subject of such widespread interest. His parents worked carefully to maintain his childhood normalcy while helping him understand the responsibility that came with their public platform. It was Nathan who provided perhaps the wisest perspective on their situation during a family dinner conversation about managing their newfound fame. "I think people like our story because it makes them remember that they can be nice to people too," he said with the matter-of-fact wisdom that continued to amaze the adults around him. "Maybe if enough people remember that, everyone will be nicer." The ripple effects of their story continued to expand in unexpected directions. Medical schools began incorporating their narrative into orientation programs for new students, using it as an example of how personal experiences could inform professional practice. Social work programs adopted their story as a case study in the importance of treating clients with dignity, regardless of their circumstances. But perhaps the most significant long-term impact came through the countless individual acts of kindness that people credited to hearing their story. Emails and letters poured in from people describing how the documentary had inspired them to help strangers, volunteer in their communities, or simply treat others with greater compassion in their daily interactions. A teacher in Oregon wrote about implementing a kindness curriculum in her elementary school based on their story. A businessman in Texas described how the film had motivated him to create a scholarship fund for disadvantaged students in his community. A nurse in Florida shared how the documentary had renewed her passion for patient care and helped her remember why she had chosen her profession. Each of these stories represented the continued multiplication of that original moment of kindness, proving that compassion truly was contagious when given the right conditions to spread. The mathematical impossibility of calculating the full impact of Nate's decision to help Marcus that snowy night became a source of wonder and gratitude for the entire family. As Nathan approached his 10th birthday, he expressed interest in creating his own contribution to the family's legacy of service. Inspired by his success with the Little Ambassadors program and his natural ability to connect with children from different backgrounds, he proposed starting a pen pal program linking patients at Boston Children's Hospital with healthy children around the world. The Heart to Heart program, as Nathan named it, would allow young patients to share their experiences with children who had never faced serious medical challenges, while also giving healthy children the opportunity to provide encouragement and friendship to kids who were dealing with difficult treatments. The program launch required careful coordination with hospital administrators, child life specialists, and international organizations, but Nathan's enthusiasm and the family's reputation opened doors that might otherwise have remained closed. Within 6 months, the program had connected over 50 young patients with pen pals in 12 different countries. The letters that flowed through the program were both heartbreaking and inspiring, showing the resilience of children facing medical challenges and the natural empathy of their healthy peers. Many relationships developed beyond simple correspondence, with families arranging video calls and even international visits when possible. One particularly moving exchange involved a young boy in Morocco who began learning English specifically to communicate with his pen pal, a patient at Boston Children's Hospital who was waiting for a heart A-day transplant. Their friendship sustained both children through difficult periods, proving that human connection could transcend geographic and cultural boundaries in the most powerful ways. As these programs continued to grow and evolve, Jamie's work in North Carolina was establishing him as a leading voice in rural pediatric cardiology. His patient-centered approach and commitment to community-based care had attracted national attention, leading to invitations to serve on professional committees and advisory boards. The combination of clinical excellence and genuine compassion that Jamie brought to his practice had transformed not just individual patient outcomes, but the entire culture of healthcare delivery in his region. Other specialists began relocating to the area, drawn by the opportunity to work in an environment that prioritized human connection alongside medical expertise. The medical center where Jamie worked had grown from a small regional facility to a recognized center of excellence for pediatric care, with families traveling from across the Southeast to receive treatment. The transformation served as a powerful example of how one person's commitment to compassionate care could catalyze broader systemic change. During a medical conference presentation about rural healthcare delivery, Jamie shared a story that perfectly illustrated the principles that guided his practice. A young patient named Maria had been born with a complex heart defect that required multiple surgeries over several years. Her family, migrant farm workers with limited English and no health insurance, had initially been afraid to seek care because of their immigration status and financial situation. Through patient advocacy and careful coordination with social services, Jamie had been able to arrange for Maria's complete treatment while also connecting the family with resources for language learning, legal assistance, and community support. The medical care was successful, but equally importantly, the family had been treated with dignity and respect throughout their interactions with the healthcare system. Maria's heart is healthy now, Jamie told his audience. But what really matters is that her family learned they could trust the medical system to care for them as human beings, not just as medical cases. That trust means they'll seek care early for future health concerns, instead of waiting until problems become emergencies. It means they'll encourage other families in their community to access healthcare when they need it. The ripple effects of treating one family with compassion extend far beyond that single patient relationship. The presentation resonated deeply with healthcare providers who were struggling to maintain their humanity while working within increasingly complex and bureaucratic medical systems. Many approached Jamie afterward to discuss how they could implement similar approaches in their own practices and institutions. Back in Boston, Marcus was witnessing his own career evolution as the success of their shared story opened new opportunities for leadership and influence. His appointment as department head had been followed by invitations to serve on national committees addressing pediatric cardiology education and research priorities. The combination of clinical excellence and advocacy for compassionate care that Marcus brought to his leadership roles was reshaping conversations about medical education and professional development. He frequently spoke about the need to balance technical training with education about empathy, communication, and the psychological aspects of patient care. During one particularly influential presentation to the American Board of Pediatrics, Marcus proposed incorporating patient story sharing into the certification process for pediatric cardiologists. The idea was that physicians should be required to demonstrate not just clinical competence, but also the ability to connect with patients and families in meaningful ways. We spend years teaching doctors how to fix hearts, Marcus argued, but we spend almost no time teaching them how to heal the fear, anxiety, and trauma that accompany cardiac conditions. Technical skill without empathy is incomplete medicine. The proposal generated significant discussion and eventually led to pilot programs at several major medical schools, with early results suggesting that physicians trained with enhanced empathy curricula showed better patient satisfaction scores and lower rates of professional burnout. Nathan's 10th birthday celebration was held at Boston Children's Hospital, transforming the pediatric ward into a party venue with decorations, games, and entertainment for all the young patients who couldn't leave their rooms. The event had become an annual tradition, with Nathan insisting that his birthday should be shared with children who were facing medical challenges. The party featured visits from professional athletes, musicians, and other celebrities who had been touched by the family's story and wanted to contribute to Nathan's mission of bringing joy to hospitalized children. But the real stars of the event were the patients themselves, many of whom had formed friendships through the various programs Nathan had helped create. Sophia, now 11 and completely healthy, served as Nathan's co-host for the party, helping him organize activities and translate for Spanish-speaking patients. Their friendship had become a symbol of the program's success, showing how connections formed during medical crises could evolve into lasting relationships that enriched both children's lives. During the party, a surprise guest appeared via video call from North Carolina. Dylan, the 12-year-old patient who had been one of Jamie's first cases in his new position, had prepared a special message for Nathan's birthday. Now, 14 and thriving, Dylan had become a youth advocate for rural healthcare access, speaking at community events about the importance of bringing specialized medical care to underserved areas. "Happy birthday, Nathan," Dylan said from his family's farm, the rolling hills of North Carolina visible in the background. "I wanted to thank you for showing kids like me that hospitals can be places where amazing things happen. Dr. Jamie saved my heart, but you and your family saved my faith in people." The video message brought tears to many eyes in the hospital room, serving as a powerful reminder of how their interconnected relationships continued to inspire and support children across the country. As Nathan blew out the candles on his birthday cake, surrounded by young patients, their families, medical staff, and the extended family that had grown from a chance encounter at a gas station, the moment captured everything beautiful about their ongoing story. Here was a child who had grown up understanding that his own privilege came with responsibility, that kindness was not just a nice gesture, but a fundamental obligation to the human community. The success of Nathan's hospital birthday parties had inspired similar events at pediatric medical centers around the country, with other families organizing celebrations that brought joy and connection to children facing medical challenges. The Birthday Wish movement, as it came to be known, had created a network of families committed to ensuring that no child had to face illness alone. As the 10th birthday party wound down and guests began to leave, Nathan made an announcement that surprised even his parents. "Next year," he said to the assembled group, "I want to have birthday parties at 10 different hospitals so more kids can celebrate with us." The logistics of such an ambitious plan were daunting, but Nathan's determination and the family's growing network of supporters made it seem possible. Over the following months, plans began to take shape for a coordinated series of birthday celebrations that would span multiple cities and touch the lives of hundreds of young patients. The 10 for 10 campaign, as it became known, attracted corporate sponsors, celebrity supporters, and thousands of volunteers who were inspired by Nathan's vision of using his birthday as an opportunity to serve others. The planning process became a family project, with everyone contributing ideas and energy to make Nathan's ambitious dream a reality. But perhaps the most meaningful aspect of the campaign was how it demonstrated the continued evolution of their family's approach to service. What had begun with Nate's simple act of kindness had grown into a movement that was touching lives around the world, but it had never lost its focus on individual human connections and the power of treating each person with dignity and respect. As Nathan's 11th birthday approached and the 10 for 10 campaign prepared to launch, the family reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought them to this point. From a scared teenager at a gas station to a movement that was inspiring kindness around the world, their story had proven that ordinary people could create extraordinary change through simple acts of compassion. The ripples from that snowy December night continued to spread, touching lives in ways they could never have imagined, creating connections that transcended geographic boundaries and cultural differences, and proving that the most powerful force for positive change in the world was still, and would always be, the decision to treat each other with kindness.